Welcome to the Directors UK podcast. We're the professional association for UK film and TV directors. No matter the format, no matter the genre, our featured directors share their approach to the craft. We hope you enjoy.
Can we have a very warm welcome for director Kate Winslet in conversation with Francis Lee? Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I am not great at improvising questions, so I bought this really nice notebook today. So you'll have to bear with me when I keep looking at it to ask Kate Winslet questions. I love this film. I thought you did an incredible job, your directorial debut. You've had an incredible career, obviously, as an actor. You've worked with incredible filmmakers. You've delivered, I think, some of the most outstanding performances of any actor. What I want to know is, why did you decide to direct now?
Because I'm a nutter. Thank you for saying all those very, very lovely things. I absolutely love acting, and I love this industry, and I love what it can offer in terms of bringing groups of people together to tell stories. And in the last 10 years, strangely, I found other people at work would say to me, "Oh, when are you going to direct?" And I would think, what? I sort of couldn't, I think I couldn't quite, couldn't quite work out why they were saying that. And more people kept saying it, and it wasn't really so much actors initially, but often crew members, like first ADs would often say to me, "Oh, you think like a director, and you're a leader," and these things that I care about very much. When you're an actor and you're cast number one on the call sheets, that isn't something that I take lightly at all. That's a huge responsibility. You're in a position where you show up every day, you are on time, you're prepared, and you lead a pack of people through this gargantuan journey. And it's very hard making films, as we know, especially when you don't have big budgets, which we also know. And I think having been directed by some truly extraordinary people in my career, Francis Lee, extraordinary, stroke, and also, yes, quite right too. But I think I've been really pulled into those relationships, not just by you, but by other people who I know we both admire, Todd Haynes, Todd Field, for example. Those directors really pulled me in as well, and I felt in the last decade or so much more a part of a solid collaborative process that somehow went beyond being an actor who shows up and delivers something of hopefully some significance. And so the idea of crafting an experience that involved wonderful actors, yes, but also putting a crew together, that's something that I, as a producer, which I've also been doing for the last few years, very much know how to do. And it's not something, that is, you don't just pick up the phone and ring around all your mates. It's a process, and you think about the history that you've had with those people and the experiences that you share with them when it comes to telling those stories. Because as an actor, of course, you are heavily involved in understanding camera angles and how a scene is being constructed. I mean, I've done, basically over 30 years in film school, really, working with some of the greatest people in this industry. And I think, as well, as a woman, I look at the lack of female directors, which is changing gradually. And having been such an advocate of female filmmakers for a large part of my life, I did get to a stage where I thought, well, who am I really if I'm not actually doing it too? Because if I don't do the thing that we're talking about needing more of, then what really am I doing to contribute to changing the culture? And it just honestly suddenly felt, okay, it's now or never. And I just ran at it. I mean, that's ultimately what it is, isn't it? You just kind of hold hands with great people and you run at it. And this felt like the right story for me to tell. I've gone through loss. I lost my mother. And it just, a story about grief and loss that ultimately to me felt incredibly uplifting. And that at the end of this film, you know that those people are going to be okay. And actually they're pulled closer together because of that shared experience. To me, there was something very, very moving about that and beautiful and also necessary in terms of those conversations around loss that I think we do typically in this country find really quite hard to have. So it was a combination of all of those things.
So can we talk about the script and the evolution of the script, where it came from? What your involvement was with the development on it. I mean, I personally know you are a brilliant script editor, because you helped me enormously. So can you talk about the first time you read it, what your reaction was, and then how you developed it with the writer, Joe?
So the writer, Joe, is my son. And Joe is also an actor. And you know, he has two well-known parents, right? So I'm his mum, his father is Sam Mendes. And coming into this industry, he was very nervous. He was full of kind of, what will people think? And yeah, I want to write and I want to act, but I'm worried about what people will say. And all of those things that understandably a young person of a successful parent would think. And he was rational about it and sensible, but passionate. And Joe he's always written, and I'm not just talking about nice pieces of homework at school that were sort of impressive. It's been a part of who he is. And through COVID, it was a big part of what pulled him through COVID, actually. And just for like the mental health of young people these days, I think leaning on creativity has certainly for Joe and his peers been really significant. So he applied for a place at the National Film and Television School on the screenwriting course they do called the Finding Your Voice screenwriting course, which I didn't know, but is apparently a heavily coveted course. I had no idea. And he got a place. And whilst he was there, it was a 6-month course and they were asked to write a screenplay. And this was what he wrote. And when his grandmother passed away, my mum, he was a teenager. And being one of many grandchildren, he was around, he was in that space, he was in those corridors, he was doing that thing of, well, can I go in and see her now? And, oh no, darling, maybe wait outside today. And, you know, he knew what we were all going through, and the loss was as much his as it was all of ours. This is obviously not a story about my own specific family, but the construct is similar in the sense that we are 3 girls and a boy. It was my mother who passed away, and there were lots of grandchildren. But this was such a dysfunctional family that he had written about. And his dialogue, that was the first thing for me I was so impressed by. I immediately wanted to be saying all of it. And when you read a lot of scripts, if you aren't saying it out loud as you're reading it, well, then it's not coming to life for you, you know? And it struck me as being so full of life, and how each character had their own trajectory. They each have their own experience, their thing that they're dealing with, and somehow how he had managed to write about death, but it's so much about life as well. And it really was incredibly impressive. And he was 19 when he first wrote it. He's now just turned 22. And I said to him, this is a film. And he said, what the fuck are you talking about? And I said, you've written a film, Joe. And he said, no, Mum, no, please don't do that, Mum. That's not why I wanted you to read it. I just wanted you to read it so that you could tell me whether or not I could actually, write something. And I said, well, you can, and you have. And I really think that you need to go away and work on it more, and let's have a proper conversation. And so he was quite baffled by all of it, and obviously didn't believe me either. He just thought, well, she's just my mum and she's just saying that. And so from then, my role as the person who was quietly planning on producing it, I wasn't going to direct it at all. As a support network, you of course give notes, lots of feedback, etc., etc. And he got very, very good at understanding how to make things shorter. He's a very descriptive writer, so often his stage direction and his description, setting scenes and so on would be really brilliant, but way too long. And so being able to say to him, great, cut it in half, was something he had to get used to hearing. And he adapted, and he really grew a lot across another 18 months of working on it more. Cutting out certain characters. There were a couple more characters in there that he ended up taking out. Adding more grandchildren. There weren't as many originally, but the children bring so much joy. I think in life, children bring the joy. And it just seemed that any opportunity to put more children in the space, I knew that it was going to bring that life around this dying woman. And actually, that part of it for Joe was a huge amount of fun in coming up with those wonderful children, those hilarious names. And who calls a child Tybalt? You know, it was just it was so funny. So yes, I was very involved alongside him as he was going through that process. And then when it was ready, I said, look, I think let's just send it to some people and see. And if no one bites it, then you'll know that you haven't written anything that's going to go any further. And Netflix put up their hand and said, we're in. At which point I was like, fuck, we've got a show. Okay. And then I did realize that maybe this was something that I should perhaps consider directing. And even if I'm saying that now, I can't quite believe that I did it, because it was a lot. I mean, acting and producing and directing, I don't think I would do it again. Not because I didn't love it, because I loved all of it. And I have been so uplifted by it, and I've learned so much. But we only had 35 days to shoot the film, and I only had Helen Mirren for 16 of those 35 days. So that was quite challenging. But as I say, there was so much goodwill around it. And when all of those wonderful actors said yes, I just thought, my God, how can I not be part of shaping this with them and for them? And I felt instinctively, I knew how to care for them and how to look after them in the capacity that I knew they would need to be taken care of. Because they are all difficult parts to play, and it doesn't seem like it because it feels quite loose in places. But it's hard to play something so normal, to be so normal. And of course, they all, as actors, have their own experiences of loss, which were very much brought to the table and shared. And that's not easy either.
So we're all directors and we all operate differently on sets. So I'm kind of interested talking about what your energy was like on set. What kind of energy did you bring to your work and pace on set?
Suddenly feel quite scared answering that question. Room full of directors. Well, it's quite confronting, isn't it, talking about what you do? And I think for me, part of it as well was figuring out what was my process actually going to be. I know what my process is as an actor. It's really fucking weird and eccentric, but it works for me. But then as a director, I just had to also be prepared to let things kind of reveal themselves to me as well. And one thing I absolutely have learned is that the actors will always show you when they're that good. It doesn't matter what idea you might have had in your head or how I imagined I was going to cover a scene. Once you get the actors in the room and you say, okay, so how do you feel? Where do you think you might be? You know, knowing that Tim Spall was absolutely going to go and sit himself in that chair and he was absolutely not going to take his hat off. You know, okay, I'm just going to let Tim figure that out. And then Johnny would often be a lot more meandery. He'd kind of wait to see what everyone else was feeling. And he's very humble, Johnny, so he would sort of hold back. He's so generous that he sort of lets everyone else say their piece first. But so my job was, yes, to look after everybody, but it was also to really be a leader and steer a ship and include everyone. So in rehearsal, for example, and it didn't even occur to me at the time that this was unusual, but of course I realized that it is quite strange. I had our camera operators in rehearsal. Now, rehearsal was a lot of conversation, obviously, with the actors, shared private conversation around literally my kitchen table. And we did that for several days. But the bigger scenes, some of the scenes that come early on, where we were able to go to our locations, we did. And that's when we had two A and B camera operators, brilliant Alistair Ray and Natasha Mullen. She's flipping amazing B camera. They were both there. And I said to the actors, look, I wanted for them to be here so that they can learn to understand your energy each day, so that they can watch you and they can quietly figure out or preempt what you might do in each scene so that they can just be ready. And our focus puller, Max, who's absolutely brilliant, he would also be there as well sometimes, because when you've got an actress like Andrea Riseborough, who is sometimes going to do something in a take that she might only do once in her life, Max Focus didn't want to fuck that up. And so the more he could be as well in tune with her rhythm and what she might bring into a room, which could often be nothing like how it was written on the page, the better understanding the crew had, and the more they were able to be with me in supporting those performances and making sure they were captured and held and upheld and preserved.
And that is a really interesting point, that when you're casting, particularly the camera operators, the people who are very close to the actors, you want to make sure that you're casting those people who are nice, sensitive, who are going to be able to build a relationship with the actors, because they're so physically close to them.
They're so physically close to them, and you're absolutely right. And film crews in this country, I think we're very, very lucky, and we do have some incredible technicians here. We really do. But we have some brilliant creatives as well who also might have a great idea. And so my job was to always be open to that. So it was never my intention to go into work each day and just say, right, this is how it's going to be. There might have been days when I would say, right, here's what we're going to do. Because the light is going to cross over the corridor and we're going to get a great big streak of windows through the center, we're going to have to do the big scene in reverse. So we'll start at the end. So I would know, I would absolutely have decided how we were going to be covering something. But within that, I would never say, here's how it's going to be. And that seemed to be something that the actors, they were quite vocal about how much they appreciated that, because they did feel that they had the space to be open and to make decisions completely of their own and sometimes change their minds in the middle of a take. And that's why having our brilliant camera operators as a part of rehearsal was so crucial to that, because it meant that those relationships as well were being formed. And that level of understanding that the crew had for the actors in their individual ways really made a very, very big difference, actually. And also keeping the set as uncluttered as possible.
What you mean with people or with
people? Yeah. So everyone obviously had to be able to do their jobs, but the crew knew, because I talked to them about it very early on, and we all just shared this idea that if we didn't need to have extra bodies in the room, everyone would just quietly take themselves off and out of the way. And everyone automatically started doing that. So there was very little of me saying, oi, you're in the eye line. People were just automatically able to read that and step away. We did a lot of locked off cameras as well, which was something that I as an actress have dreamt of having, and I'd never been able to experience that because of course it's so hard. When you talk about a closed set, it's never really a closed set, is it? Because there's always someone standing behind a camera looking through an eyepiece. But we actually were able to lock off the cameras, and every single person left the room and just left the actors on their own with these cameras just rolling. And it was wonderful to hear Helen Mirren say, I don't think I've ever actually experienced that before. And it wasn't a win for me in any way. I just felt so happy for her that she was able to experience something new at the age of 80. I mean, she's Helen Mirren. And what was I ever going to be able to say to Helen Mirren that she hadn't heard before as a director? But I did feel confident about being able to offer her and Tim Spall an environment that perhaps was just different in terms of how uncluttered it was. We didn't have any overhead booms ever. We had lots of hidden microphones everywhere.
And sorry, the reason you were doing this was...
The reason I was doing this was because I wanted for the actors to feel unnerved by just how real each moment could be for them. So removing the people meant that they had so much freedom, and it really impacted on those relationships, on particularly, I think, in the second half of the film. Whereas actors, they were all starting to unravel a little bit. You know, you can all feel it getting closer. You know that she's going to die. Here it comes. You know you're on story day 7 and she dies at the end of story day 8. And you know you've mapped it all out as an actor. And it mattered enormously to give them that space and not to be ever controlling it or clouding it or cluttering it with stuff and things and too many people and props and getting rid of the overhead booms. We actually never had them. It was really fantastic. And with that many children, you just simply can't have booms because they just go like that. And they try and grab them, want to squeeze the funny phone microphone, don't they? So for that reason as well, it helped. And the children were mic'd too. So they were, as people were improvising, sometimes the children were also improvising, which is when children improvise, it's just completely golden. And so we were able to use all of that when it came to the mix.
So it sounds to me like your process as a director is to enable actors to be rather than to act. Is that correct?
That is correct. Because when I was little, actually when I was 5, I remember sitting on the loo one day. This is a really true story, sorry. But I was sitting on the loo and we lived in a really small house and I could hear the chaos of the house around me as I was sitting there on the loo. And I actively thought to myself, wow, if somebody put a video camera in any one of the rooms in our house, well, it would sort of seem like acting, wouldn't it? If you put that on telly, it would be like acting because that's just being. Oh, it's not acting then. Oh, it's just being. And I really remember thinking that when I was 5. And so that's how I have tried to behave as an actor is to be, really to be. And so as a director, yes, doing what I could to create a space that offered our actors the opportunity to experience that was the most important thing of all.
I think you did it really successfully. And I think that the proof of the pudding is in the incredibly resonant, authentic, truthful performances you've got.
Thank you.
As directors and filmmakers, we all, I think, know that we don't really get to see other directors and filmmakers direct because we're only ever on our own sets. And obviously you've been able to see an awful lot of directors and filmmakers and how they work. How do you think having that such a extensive experience of other people's work informed your work as a director?
I mean, for the record, I've actually mostly had incredible experiences with directors. I had a couple where you do sort of think, okay, you're a bit of a shouty one. A little bit minty, okay.
What does that mean?
No, oh, twat. But I know what doesn't work for actors. That's something I feel I can confidently say. And I know that when directors try and be a bit sort of tricksy or manipulative, there's nothing more annoying than to an actor. And actually, we talked about this on Goodbye June. There's nothing more annoying to an actor than when a director will come up and say, "Oh, are you okay? You seem a bit, you're all right. Something going on at home." And you say, "Well, actually, it might be." What? And if there is something maybe going on at home, if that director turns to you and says, "Use it," that is it. The guard goes up, fuck you. And it's a thing that actors do. You immediately become protective, defensive, held. You don't want them to see your cracks and the chinks in your armor and your vulnerability, and you just want them to go away. So knowing what doesn't work for me was really critical. And I have learned. I have learned. Yeah. There's another one as well. Directors will go, there's another way to say that line. Is there? Do you want to show me? Tell me, how do you think it should be said? Well, you know. Oh, no, I don't actually. Tell me, help me, show me. That one can be very confusing, and I'm sure there is. And there usually is 10 other ways that a line could be said. But that's just simply not the way to say to an actor, can I help you? That's not what you do.
And all actors work differently, right? So it's, as a director, it's your job to find out what works best for the individual actor. Whereas some actors could be like super methody and need to be in character and go through that process, but other actors work very differently. So how was that process with the actors, getting to know them and, I guess, tailoring your directing for each individual actor?
Well, that's the part I loved the most of all. And it was also the part that, kind of ridiculous as it sounds, took my breath away the most of all, actually, was just how different they all were in terms of what they needed from me, in terms of how they needed me to be, in terms of how loudly or quietly I would talk, in terms of how closely I would stand to them. Next to them, they all needed something so different. Toni Collette, sometimes she just needed me to go, that space, all yours. And she'd go, got it. And then Jelly, he just needed to stand in a corner and let him stand in the corner. Helen Mirren needed me to tell her, lie down, you're going to be dead tomorrow, so just don't move your head, okay? Don't you think I should wear a cardigan? No, you're not having a fucking cardigan. Lie down. Right. But she actually wanted that. She wanted practical, just tell me what to do. Andrea, who is, she's a creature. She's a complete creature. So actually she is, I would say, the more method probably of all of them, even though I don't think she would describe herself or even see herself that way. And that is something that you have to absolutely preserve. I sometimes felt like she was a butterfly in a thin glass case, and I just had to make sure that the glass case was carried carefully to the set and that she was put in front of the camera and that we would start quietly, very quietly. It was always very quietly rolling. Sometimes it was just hand signals. Sometimes with the children we would say, and go, because if you say action, children are like, oh, I have to do my line now, that line that I learned really, really well 6 weeks ago that I've been practicing with my mum, that only ever comes out the exact same way every time. Tim Spall, I really, really treasured the experience of working with Tim, because actually out of all of them, I found him to be the most like myself as an actor. The need to really, truly understand every single choice that he was making and wanting to be sure that they were the right things. And so we would have 10-minute conversations about whether he had the hat on or not. But I understood why. I really did, because for him, that hat was a respect thing. He only ever really wanted to take it off when he was in the room with June. And sometimes even then he wouldn't quite. And it was a sign of him being a bit shirky. Not, would he stay? Is he going to go to the chippy? Is he in? Is he out? There was something sort of a metaphor really for him about that hat. In every part of his costume was very emotional for him. Did he take his jacket off? Was it on? Was it, it all made a difference in terms of how committed he felt he as Bernie really was to staying in the hospital for, well, maybe I'll put my feet up for 6 hours. Actually, no, I'm going to go to the vending machine in 5 minutes. It all made a big difference to him. And I really, really treasured that and understood that.
And so as we're talking about working with actors, and you deliver, I think, a really beautiful performance in this film.
Always forget that I'm actually in it.
How did you direct yourself?
Well,
What did you need?
fucking hell. I mean, I remember I kept saying, it's not about me, it's not about me, it's not about me. And actually Lydia, our first AD, would say, darling, you are in the scene. Just stop. What do you need? I mean, I approached it differently as an actor, because I just had to be so prepared. So as prepared as I was for the film, with our pre-production, all of, I mean, I just had to be so damn ready. But it was the same for me as the person playing Julia. I learnt the script actually like a play. I learnt the whole thing, which I would never normally do, just because it's not a process that has worked for me typically. But I realised that the most important thing for me was that I was never panicking. I didn't want to get home after a hard day and go, shit, I've got the 11-page scene in the corridor with Andrea tomorrow. Oh God. I didn't want to do that to myself, because there's nothing worse actually than real fear as an actor. I think a bit of healthy fear is necessary, but proper shitting yourself, I'm going to fuck this up fear is not good. So, and I did definitely have the added advantage of having lost my own mother, of having been in those spaces and knowing how they feel, and knowing that when you are by someone's side and you know that they're going to go, no one's really going home at a certain point. And so Grace, our costume designer, she and I talked a lot about that, and how clothes at a certain point, you go home, you plonk your clothes on the floor, and then you pick up clothes from the floor wardrobe again, don't you? And you plonk them back on, and then you just go back to the hospital, and everyone's in socks, and it becomes as much your home as it has suddenly become that dying patient's home. So I did have that in me, and I was very struck by how immediately available that time was again for me, having lost my mum. Sorry. Okay, I'm fine. It just doesn't go away, does it? It just changes shape. And so, but directing myself, though, I was with brilliant actors. So, and actors, you do turn to each other and say, was that any fucking good? Should I do it again? And, the honesty that we all shared meant that they, like Tony would say to me, I preferred the 1-2 ago. Do that again. That was better. I think, okay, great. I'll do that. Okay. And having to rely on their opinions mattered a lot. I had to be really ready with choices for myself. So I did very much map out an emotional plan for myself. And actually, I wrote more down than I think I normally would, just so I had something to reference. Because there was no going and checking takes at a monitor. There was no time. I couldn't be going and standing and watching myself back after. That just made no sense. So I knew that I was going to be able to really sit with the material only when I was about to go into the edit. And that was what I did. And I took 6 days immediately after we wrapped the film, and I just watched absolutely every single take of the entire film, and made my own personal notes that were separate to the notes I'd made on the day, that were separate to the notes that I'd made with our continuity woman, who was amazing. Because of course everything feels differently, doesn't it, after the event, and it starts to really reveal itself to you in very surprising ways in the edit. And that actually, you were the person, Francis said to me, I'm about 2/3 of the way, and he said, this is the stage at which the film is going to start to push back if it doesn't like something that you might try and move around or change. He says, and I remember you saying, just look out for that, because that will start to happen. And that did start to happen. I remember trying to, it was an experiment, and I sort of knew it was an experiment. I was trying to restructure something in the last third, and the second I did it, the whole film went, wait. I thought, okay, no, put that back. But I loved learning that, and being able to be in the edit. I was there from beginning to end. I never left.
So just before you talk about the edit, could you talk about the editor's assembly and watching it for the first time? I remember the first time I made a film, and I'm sure lots of people have had this experience in this room. Everybody said to me, when you watch the editor's assembly, you will just cry and drink a bottle of gin and think you've got no film and you've utterly failed. I mean, that didn't happen to me, but it is a really, really scary time to sit down and watch what all the people involved in your production have done for the last 6 weeks, all that work. How was it for you? Did you need a bottle of gin?
I'm just trying to think. I mean, I was so... Honestly, I loved making the film so much. I felt so lucky that I got to do it. That I was really excited to see the assembly. I just was excited to see the story play out. Did it work? You know, were there obvious things that didn't work? I didn't have a crisis, but it was very clear to me straight away, that doesn't work, that's too long, that's got to go, that needs to go before that piece, that's how it originally was on the page. A lot of what we ended up doing in the edit, really interestingly, was putting the film back, and this is, with my hand on my heart, I mean this, putting the film back in the original order that it was in literally the second draft. And that was really wonderful to see. I was like, yep, no, Joe was absolutely fucking right. That scene needed to go there, and that one should go way later. I was excited to get my hands on it, actually, with Lucia Zucchetti, my editor, who is fucking brilliant. She's just wonderful.
Sorry, had you been watching dailies, or was this?
What I would do was I would watch dailies. I would watch dailies on a Saturday, and I would make my own notes. But what I did discover about myself, and this is honestly a discovery, I didn't know that I had the capacity to do this at all. I was absolutely able to remember all the important, brilliant moments from each take, from each actor in any given scene. So I do remember in the rough assembly, the scene with Tim when he sings Georgia in the pub. Lucia had used take 3. And I immediately afterwards I said, oh, we've got to use take 5. And she said, no, that is take 5. I said, no, that's definitely, that's the third take. And she'd be like, oh, hang on. Oh, yeah. And I had this bizarre ability, which I swear but it was very, very handy, because when it got to the stage of the edit, when other people start giving notes, it was really good for me to be able to have my sort of central roadmap from take to take to take of where I knew the scene really emotionally landed, because they became my little anchor points. And actually that's something I did find really quite hard, was getting to the stage in the edit where it mattered that other people saw it. It mattered that they were allowed to give opinions. And sometimes I agreed with those opinions and sometimes I very much didn't. But learning how to communicate the things that I didn't agree with, and sometimes saying to somebody, I know what you mean, how you've just explained it was not accurate, but I do know what you mean. So being able to decipher what somebody actually means, that was something else. I'm excited to learn that more, because that was quite puzzling to me. And also not getting pissed off. You know, you don't want to get to a point where you think, oh, well, that person's just saying that because they're, throwing their weight around. You just can't do that at all. It just doesn't work. And I'm not like that as a person. I don't typically get, just grumpy for the sake of grumpy or ego-y, or the leaving the ego at the door part was so crucial, because I have worked with directors who don't know how to do that. And that's really hard, because then they dominate a set in a way that isn't helpful and actually can be a bit scary for people.
So it's always about being open, right? And being open to learn, and knowing that you aren't the expert in every single field on that set.
Oh my God. I mean, it was critical. So even when an actor would turn to me and say, so in the scene that we haven't shot yet, that comes 3 scenes after this one, so how do you think you're going to cover that scene? And sometimes I would have an answer, and sometimes I wouldn't, because I would know, I want to see what Helen has to say. Let me see what Tim wants to contribute. And knowing how to turn to that actor and say, I don't know yet. Let's talk about it tomorrow. That was fine. It's fine to say that. It is absolutely okay to say, don't know, don't have an answer. Roger Michelle used to say that a lot. Oh, God rest his soul. But Rod used to say, don't know yet, come back to me in 10. Actually, come back to me in 20. And I'd think, okay, I will. And then you can have a conversation on an equal playing field. You know, these damn pecking orders, man, they really mess things up. And as an actor, I hate that. I have to stamp it out straight away, because it's just not how it's not how you help people excel at what they do. As actors, as crew members, it's just not helpful.
And that's your job as a director, right?
I felt that was my job as a director.
I'm going to ask you one more question before we ask this lovely audience for their questions. Was there anything that you really had to fight for?
Yes. There was, actually. I had to fight for the fact that the reason that Molly and Julia's relationship has broken down is just a bunch of petty, it's just sister stuff. It's just corrosive, silly jealousies, past resentments to the point that no one can actually remember what they were pissed off about. That is life. There were opinions in the development of the script that there needed to be a thing that had happened. And Jay tried very hard, and I supported him in trying to find ways to insert some thing that Julia had done, or that, you know, had Molly borrowed some money, or had Jerry, her husband, done something. It just became a different film. And to me, the story about a sibling relationship that just meanders and falls apart. I mean, over Christmas, I saw my older sister, Anna. It was completely wonderful. I saw her for the first time in 2 years, and it was terrific. We don't particularly keep in contact in a very consistent way. We absolutely love each other. And there are moments where I think, why hasn't Anna phoned me? That's weird. I wonder if, oh God, I hope I haven't done something to, you know, you sort of go through those silly things, don't you? No problem at all. She's just been busy. You know, she moved to Cambridge and she's just been busy. But sometimes siblings who are really needy of that relationship might decide, I must have done something. And you go into this mode of inventing narratives that simply don't necessarily exist. And if they did exist, they're kind of long gone. And they undermine a relationship that you could have now. So I did have to fight for the fact that that relationship is really about just real sister stuff that happens. And I'm proud that we stuck to our guns, because it's one of my favorite parts of the film, actually.
And mine too. I'm glad you fought for it. And I think what I'm interpreting is you're just fighting for the truth in your work.
Always. I only ever care about the truth. As an actor, I'm the same. I had a conversation last week with a writer I worked with in the past, and he said to me, you know, he was asking me for some opinions on something because he had to give a talk, and I was sort of just encouraging him, reminding him of how he was on set, and he said to me, yeah, but Kate, he said, and this is not me flattering myself, I'm simply sharing a thing. He said, but Kate, you always only ever fight for what's right for the story. He said, and he talked about how he had learnt from that, because it's not always the case, actually, with actors, and not always the case, I think, with actors who become directors, perhaps. You just can't ever be out for number one. It just can't be that way. It's not, to me, that's not storytelling at all.
Good. I don't know how this works, but we're now going to ask questions of you, lovely people, if anybody has a question for Kate. This gentleman here. Yes, thank you.
Hello, Kate. Thank you for this movie. I wanted to ask, did you feel the pressure as a mother and as a director to give justice to your son's script? And if you felt the pressure, how did you cope and talk with your son?
I don't think I'd been asked that at all. Did I feel the pressure? I think I wouldn't so much say pressure, but I felt I had to, I felt determined to uphold what he had written. And that was actually at times really hard to do because he's so young. He's so young. And of course, he's very vulnerable to opinions of other people. So when someone would give a note, he would immediately think, oh God, yeah, okay, maybe they're right. And maybe that. So being able to say to him, that doesn't, they're not actually, they might not be right. Try the idea. I don't think it's necessarily going to work, but give it a go. So I suppose trying to just always support him was very important, but also including him. So he was there. He actually wasn't there for the first 3 weeks of the shoot because the little shit is so talented. He got a job in New Zealand as an actor. And I'm like, great. He was filming in New Zealand. But when I did have him for the second half, it was absolutely wonderful, you know, showing him how it was all going to, how these scenes were coming to life. Sometimes just because the actors were ready to go, you know, and I as the director had to be ready with the cameras just to catch what they were going to barrel into that room with, and never over fiddling, you know. And Joe, he has talked about coming to the set for the first time and just going, oh my God, it's all here. There's this whole family that's been created, and they're all doing it. I mean, he was very overwhelmed by the experience constantly. It was really great for us actually as a mother and son, the experience of doing this together, because we had to sort of learn each other in a new way, which was wonderful. A different level of kind of patience with each other. I move at quite a fast pace, and he's not so fast paced. He's a very humble, gentle person who just has he has a slightly different rhythm. So I also had to learn that I can't just be, you know, I can't just be going like this all the time, because that's not helpful either. But it was honestly, actually, it really was wonderful. I wish I could tell you a story about, you know, he got upset with me and I got upset with him, but actually that genuinely didn't happen. Thank God, amazingly.
Lots of hands. I'm going to pick some. I'll come back to you guys at the front because there's some people at the back. This person here with their hand up there. Yes, you're looking around.
Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Congratulations on the debut. It's always a big step. I was wondering whether you had any specific expectations coming into the first directing work that might have or might have not revealed themselves to be true, and what kind of takeaways are you taking into the further work you'll be directing after that first experience?
Such an interesting question. If I had any I think I probably had expectations of myself. You know, I didn't want to fuck it up. You know, I didn't want to. And there was no point pretending that, you know, I've done this before. I haven't done it before. I haven't. And being surrounded by such an incredible crew was really important. So Alvin Kutchler, RDP, I've worked with him before 3 times as an actress and have a really fantastic relationship with him. And our camera team I'd also worked with before, and so had he. And that made a really big difference in terms of never panicking about things like expectation or what might be expected of me. In terms of my own expectations, I was massively supported by these brilliant actors. When you get actors at that level, they come prepared. They're so well processed. They do their homework. They are absolutely ready. So I know that I expected really great things to happen each day. What I didn't expect actually was how much they would all they all really loved each other. It was so moving. I've never seen it quite like that before. You know, typically actors really get on great, and there are, you know, we're an odd breed, quite strange individuals actually. But when you're all together in a pack, there's nothing like it. And so that was something I didn't necessarily anticipate would happen, because it doesn't always happen. Sometimes someone will just rub someone up the wrong way. They'll just be irritating to them. But they all really really loved and cared about one another. And it really added to the film. Actually, there were times when I would have to say to Johnny, stop telling everyone that you love them. You've got to, this is not a family who's comfortable with the love yous, you know. He'd be like, oh yeah, shit, okay. And he's such a loving person himself. So he would have to be firmly reminded, no, you don't love her right now. You can't find the words. And in terms of what next, I mean, I really want to do it again. I really do. I really, really I loved it so much. And it's been interesting actually doing the press for the film, because at this sort of particular time in the year, you often find yourself at events or in places where you'll bump into other actors and other directors and filmmakers and so on. And I've been quite surprised by the number of directors who have come up and said, oh, how was it? You know, and I said, oh my God, I just loved it. And they're like, ugh. And I was like, what? Because I'm so excited all the time. Yeah, I bumped into someone who said, oh my God, by the end, I just completely just stick at the sight of it and I just want it to be over. I never wanted it to finish. I mean, even the last day of the sound mix, I was still, you know, getting them to replay me the sound of the kettle as it goes on the hob because it sounded too clunky. And I really just loved it. So, who knows? I just hope I do get to do it again.
More questions? Okay, this gentleman here in white.
Thank you. Hi, Kate. Has this, two questions, everyone's going to hate me with that. So, but has this experience of being a director, has it changed in any way how you approach being an actor for other directors? And the second one, which is a quick one, do you wish you'd done it sooner?
Well, so I only delivered the film on like October the 13th or something bonkers. And then I was almost immediately doing press. So, and I haven't acted yet. But the interesting thing is I can't wait to do some acting. I feel like, I just want to go and just do some acting. I feel like I just need that, you know. I can't describe it any other way than I just need to roar into something. And I'll be doing just that later this year, which I'm excited for. So I don't know actually yet really how it will, I think I've just got to be, I think I'll be very sensitive to not making another director think, oh God, is Kate standing there thinking I should be on the 45 or I should, I would hate for anyone to feel like I was ever kind of policing things they were doing. So I don't know. I'm probably just going to be trying to kind of keep myself, fuck knows, I don't know. What was the other part you said? Oh, I couldn't have done it sooner, because the thing is about female directors is that quite a lot of us are mothers, and I've been raising children for 25 years, and my daughter Mia is 25, and it seems insane. Joe's 22, obviously I said, and then my youngest has just turned 12. And it's so much of a juggle anyway, just all of it. And of course, being a director, it is not just, 8 weeks of your life as we had with Ammonite, or 7 weeks with Goodbye June, or, 6 months as I've had with PV things that I've done. It is well over a year of your life, typically much, much more if you're developing a script over a number of years. I mean, with Lee, which of course I did not direct, it was directed by Ellen Kuras, but I produced that film, and the development of that script was 7 years, just trying to raise the funds to keep paying people to write it. And so as a director, it's just because it's so much more time, obviously, I actually couldn't have done it sooner. There's simply, no, I just couldn't have done.
Some more questions?
Hello, Kate.
Oh,
Congrats on your debut feature film.
thank you.
As soon as it was decided that you were going to play the role of Julia, did your son make any adjustment based on his knowledge of you to the character? Or
It's really funny because now that you're asking me the question, he did actually change some things, but not to make it more like me. actually almost the opposite, I'd say. Yeah, so there were, yeah, he definitely did. But then, to be honest, every character also changed dramatically as soon as all of those brilliant actors started saying yes. I mean, the second Toni Collette said yes, I turned to Joanna, I'm like, go to town, because she's so wonderful and she's so funny, but she also has the ability to be very, very subtle and very, very small in the things that she does too. So it was wonderful for him to go back to the script with all of those actors cast and really give it a shake-up and an uplift, and also to listen to them. That was something else that he had to learn immediately, really quickly, which is, first of all, not easy for a writer to do, and secondly, sometimes writers don't particularly like doing that. You know, a writer's process is so different depending on how big that project might be, depending on how, I mean, Francis is a very private writer and very quiet in that process, and it's really sacred and important. Whereas Joe actually found himself becoming less protective and private because he had so many voices giving him really interesting, useful ideas, takes on the character, things that he might not have thought of before, furiously writing them down and laughing and kind of having a great time implementing ideas from fucking incredible actors. I mean, it was such a luxurious, privileged position for him to be in at that level when he was having those conversations with them. So a lot evolved really once all of those actors came on board, which I think is typically.
I think it is. I think, yeah. Once you've cast, and as I'm sure you guys know, and you know who's going to be playing that part, you can hear their rhythm and their voice in your head when you do those final passes on the script. We have time for one last question. I want to make it fair, but I don't know how to do that.
Somebody's actually waving at the back.
Okay, let's go with the waver at the back.
Oh, I'm glad that worked. Kate, what an amazing debut. It was a very, very poignant story. I've also lost my mum and my dad, and just so well observed, and yeah, absolutely beautiful. So thank you. And I just wanted to ask if you could tell us a bit more about how you went about financing, and, you know, did you cast it already? Did you have people attached when you went to Netflix? And when did your producers come on board? And congratulations again.
You're so lovely. Thank you so much for saying that, really. And I'm so sorry you've lost both your parents. It's like the North Star just drops up the sky and you just can't find it again. I know. It's awful. It's awful. Especially Christmases. They're hard, aren't they? To answer your question. So, okay. I'm trying to think exactly how it went now. So we went to... No. Andrea had read it. That's right. Andrea had read it very early on, and she said, "Oh my God, please come and play Molly," which made me then think, well, if she's playing Molly, then I'm bloody playing Julia, because I don't want to miss out on that with her. And I've become very, very close with Andrea, and we've just done a few things actually back to back over the last 2 years together. So it was Andrea and I, and then Joe and I, part of my thing of making my son really believe that we were going to make this into a film was writing down the wish list, the cast wish list. And he would say to me, "Oh, you are never going to get Tim Spall. What are you talking about?" I mean, he just was like, "You're mad." I said, "No, come on, let's write them down. And so when we did approach Netflix, and we had approached a couple of other people as well, but when we approached Netflix and they became engaged quite quickly, sharing with them the ideas around casting, and at that point ideas around directors, because it wasn't going to be me at that point. That was quite exciting, and they had notes on the script, most of which Joe was able to address, some of which I was saying to him, "Don't change that bit, don't change that bit." And then when we had a script that felt like it was ready, that was the point when I suddenly thought, "Oh my God, I can't let this go. I can't give it away." It seemed like we were giving it away if we'd gone to one of the directors who had been on our wish list of directors. Putting the actual budget together. So the compromise that I felt I had to make was actually on the length of the shoot, which if I had my time again, I would have tried to find other ways to squeeze out another week, because it was 7 weeks. I mean, it was really breakneck. It was. And with all of those children who all work across different hours, I mean, I'm sure you all know, you've worked with children in this room. You can only put a baby in front of a camera for 30 minutes per day. Thank God we have identical twins. But so all of that was extremely challenging, on top of only having Helen Mirren for the 16 days, as I mentioned earlier, which was nuts. And the pressure on me to never be able to get behind. I couldn't drop anything. I couldn't let a scene, I couldn't go over shooting a scene by half an hour. A couple of times I was able to do that, but it meant that I was taking a hit somewhere else where I think, oh shit, okay, fuck. Okay, so I'm going to have to make a compromise in terms of how I might want to shoot the next scene, for example, which often would mean, okay, we'll have to go more handheld, which we might not have necessarily planned. Our line producer, Tina Paulick, is absolutely fantastic. So her budget lines were so clear and they were so solid. And because I absolutely understood how we were essentially divvying up our money, and being able to treat people fairly also mattered enormously to me in terms of the crew. It's not a charity. Everyone's doing a job that they deserve to be paid properly for and respectfully for. And that was really important to me, because there is still a huge amount of goodwill that comes with making any film, but especially when it's one that you are all literally chasing your tails every single day. And I love doing jobs like that. We had that on Ammonite as well. I love doing jobs like that because everybody knows you're all being treated the same. You're all there for the same reason, and so the goodwill and the sense of everyone being in it together that comes with an environment like that one is enormously important. And that was also part of being a director as well as the producer, was making sure that sense of equality was real. It's not pretending, and everyone knows that. We just had to be so. I mean, I can't tell you. The prep was crackers. It was insane. Even as I'm saying it now, I'm remembering just how mental it was. When I think about Ammonite, I feel like we had loads of time, but we didn't, did we? No, sorry.
No, we had 30 days.
We had was it 30?
30 days.
Why did I think it was 8 weeks? And because we had
2 weeks rehearsal.
Yes, we did. We had 2 weeks of lots of really good fossiling and rehearsal. Yes, we did. I loved that part. I know you hated it. That was my favourite bit.
Oh,
the digging
for fossils. Yeah,
I loved that. But yes, so you just have to be. That's such a meandery answer. I'm sorry, but it was really about being just solidly prepared and actually throwing loads of good energy at it. I couldn't be sad and bothered by the fact that I didn't have as long to shoot, a pivotal scene in the film as I would have liked. I had to just go, right, okay, so here's the plan. and just going at it with real determination and grace and kindness, that matters to me so much. It's a bloody hard world, and it's a tough industry, and it is hard making films. And I will tell you, it is very hard making films as a woman. And there are simply ways in which I think female directors are communicated with that is actually different in terms of the words that are used. That's for another time. But having to hold my own, knowing I was doing this for the first time as a woman, as an actress, becoming a director as well. I had to I just had to put my big girl pants on and just go for it. And that's what I did.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the questions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to Kate and to Directors UK, and
Thank you to Francis.
have
very much.
a lovely evening, everybody.
Thank you.
This podcast was recorded at a Directors UK member event. You can hear plenty more directors in conversation by subscribing on the usual streaming platforms. Follow us on social media and find out more about us at directors.uk.com.